There's a strange moment that happens when you're watching someone argue with reality. They're not arguing with facts exactly. They're arguing with what the facts mean. You can see it in their face, the tightening, the certainty, the way their eyes narrow as if they're trying to force the world into a shape that feels safe. And sometimes you catch yourself doing it too, in quieter ways, not out loud, internally. You read a message and your mind instantly assigns a tone. You walk into a room and your body decides whether it's safe before you've spoken to anyone. You receive silence from someone you care about and your brain fills it with a story that feels like truth. That's the part most people miss. We keep talking about controlling life, controlling outcomes, controlling the future. Yet so much of what we call control is happening one step earlier. In the lens, in the interpretation, in the meaning you place on what you're seeing. The outside world can be stubborn, it can be unfair, it can be unpredictable. You don't get to set the weather. You don't get to rewrite other people. You don't get to edit the past. But interpretation is different. Interpretation is the inner act of choosing what something stands for. And the nervous system treats interpretation like a command. It doesn't wait around to check whether your thoughts are accurate. It responds as if they are. A thought arrives, this is going to go badly, and the body starts preparing for impact. Another thought arrives, they don't respect me, and your chest tightens as if you're already being pushed away. This is how a private sentence becomes an emotional climate. The brain has a habit of treating thoughts as facts, especially when the thought matches an old fear. So when people say they want control, they often mean they want the feeling of stability. And the fastest doorway to that feeling is rarely the external world cooperating. It's the lens becoming cleaner. It's the meaning becoming more honest. It's noticing that the mind is not a neutral narrator. It is an interpreter with preferences, with habits, with a history. Attention is where that interpretation gets its power. Attention decides what becomes real to you, not in a mystical way, in a practical one. If your attention is glued to threat, your world will feel threatening. If your attention is glued to what you lack, your life will feel like a shortage. If your attention is glued to comparison, you will feel behind even while you're moving. This is why attention feels like a remote control you didn't realize you were holding. You may not control every channel that exists, but you do influence which one plays the loudest inside you. And right now, a lot of things compete for that remote. Algorithms that are designed to keep you anxious and scrolling. People who unconsciously pull your attention toward their needs. Old memories that flare up at night when the room is quiet. The cost of letting anything else steer your attention isn't only time. It's mood. It's self-trust. It's the slow shaping of your inner world into something you didn't choose. You can feel it when your attention is taken from you. It feels like being dragged. You open your phone for one thing and emerge 20 minutes later with a slightly heavier mind. You replay a conversation, and each replay sharpens the same edges, as if repeating it will finally resolve it, but it never does. You sit down to rest, and your attention refuses to stay put. It jumps from worry to worry, and suddenly rest feels like work. This is not because you're broken. It's because attention behaves like water. It goes where the channel is deepest. If you've spent years digging channels of worry, attention will flow there without asking permission. That's the hidden skill, though. Skills can be trained, not with force, not with harsh self-control, but with repetition, with small moments of redirecting the stream. Because when you can direct attention, gently, consistently, you begin to direct your entire experience of life. Your circumstances may remain complex, but your inner world stops being entirely hijacked by the loudest thought in the room. Emotional states complicate this even more, because emotions don't just color reality, they rewrite it in real time. Fear makes neutral things look threatening. A delayed reply becomes rejection. A small mistake becomes catastrophe. A tired day becomes proof that you're failing. And the mind will defend these interpretations as if they're objective. That's what a strong emotional state does. It narrows perception. The brain becomes a spotlight instead of a floodlight. It scans for evidence that matches the feeling. You remember past failures more vividly. You predict future pain more confidently. The world starts to look like your mood. Then the mood starts to look like the world. It becomes a closed loop. There's a difference between being in a feeling and being ruled by it. Being in a feeling is honest. It says, "This is what I'm experiencing right now." Being ruled by it is more subtle. It says, "This is what reality is." State regulation sounds like a technical phrase, but it's basically the ability to return to the present without having to win an argument with your own mind. When the nervous system is calmer, the mind becomes less extreme. Not because life becomes perfect, because your perception stops being squeezed through the narrow opening of threat. In that sense, the real superpower isn't controlling the world. It's controlling the state from which you interpret the world. When your state stabilizes, reality stops controlling you in the same automatic way. Identity adds another filter, quieter but stronger. Identity decides what you're allowed to see. Two people can stand in the same room, hear the same opportunity, receive the same feedback, and walk away with different realities. One sees possibility, the other sees danger. One hears an invitation, the other hears a judgment. That's not because one person is smarter. It's because self-image creates perceptual blindness. If you carry an identity of, "I'm the kind of person who doesn't get chosen," your brain will filter out evidence that contradicts it. Compliments slide off. Chances look suspicious. New doors feel like traps. The old identity defends familiar limits because familiar limits are predictable. Predictability feels safe to the nervous system, even when it's painful. This is why the world can seem to change when identity shifts, even if nothing external changes yet. You begin to notice things you used to miss. You stop interpreting every ambiguous moment as a threat. You recognize that some of your limits were stories you learned, then repeated until they felt like personality. Identity transitions can feel disorienting because you're between versions of yourself. You're not fully the old self anymore, but the new one isn't solid yet. In that gap, reality can feel unstable. That instability is often mistaken for failure. It might simply be the mind losing its old script. When identity stops shrinking what you perceive, reality expands. Not by magic, by permission. And permission begins, strangely enough, with interrupting the loop. Not the whole life, the loop. The loop that turns a thought into a verdict, a feeling into a prophecy, a moment into a story about your future. You don't have to overhaul everything to change your experience. Sometimes you only need a few minutes where you stop obeying the automatic narrative. It can be simple, not impressive, something you can do in a kitchen, in a hallway, in a parked car. You might name the thought without arguing with it. Just label it. Catastrophe story. Rejection story. Not enough story. Then you might name the feeling underneath. Tightness. Shame. Fear. And then, instead of trying to think your way out, you return to sensation. The weight of your feet on the floor. The temperature of the air. The movement of your breath. Not as a spiritual performance, as a way of telling your nervous system, we're here, right now. The mind can keep talking, but it doesn't get to drag the whole body into tomorrow. That observer step, watching thoughts instead of obeying them, sounds small, yet it changes the relationship. Thoughts lose a bit of authority when you can see them as events rather than instructions. Catastrophizing thrives on speed. It needs momentum. When you slow down and anchor in the present for a minute or two, the loop loses fuel. Short practices work because they're repeatable. They don't demand a perfect mood. They don't require a retreat or a new identity. They simply interrupt the distortion long enough for the system to reset. In minutes, you don't change the whole landscape of your life. You change the lens that was warping it. And as the lens changes, your sense of control starts to mean something different. Control isn't force. Force tends to create resistance inside you. You can feel it when you try to bully yourself into calm. The body stiffens, the mind argues back. You become two people fighting in the same skin. Choice is different. Choice is quieter. Choice doesn't need to overpower the emotion. It only needs to choose the next response. That might mean answering later instead of reacting now. It might mean taking one breath before speaking. It might mean deciding not to send the message you'll regret. Agency returns through small choices, especially under pressure. Because pressure is where the old autopilot loves to take the wheel. A deliberate decision in a tense moment doesn't look heroic. Often it looks boring. It looks like not escalating. It looks like not explaining yourself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. It looks like letting discomfort exist without turning it into a crisis. The nervous system learns trust through evidence, not through affirmations. Each time you choose response over reaction, you teach yourself something. You teach your mind that it doesn't need to run the same emergency program. You teach your body that discomfort can be survived without retreating into old patterns. And gradually, the sense of being controlled by your own inner weather starts to loosen. Most people live inside automatic mental patterns without realizing it. Not because they're weak, because autopilot is efficient. The brain loves efficiency. It saves energy by repeating what it already knows. It predicts the world, then filters perception to match the prediction. That's helpful when you're crossing a street or driving a familiar route. It's costly when your predictions are shaped by old fear. Awareness is what breaks the spell. Awareness doesn't need to be dramatic. It can be simple noticing. The moment you notice you're spiraling is already a crack in the spiral. The moment you notice you're turning a feeling into a prophecy is already a step back from the ledge. The moment you notice your attention has been hijacked is already the moment you can reach for the remote again. This is why a message like this is best understood as an interruption, not as motivation. Motivation rises and falls. Promises feel good and then fade. Practice is quieter. Practice is less exciting. Practice is what changes your baseline. Trusting practice over promises is not pessimism. It's maturity. You don't need to believe in a perfect future to benefit from a clearer lens today. You don't need to force certainty to choose one grounded response. And if part of you hears the idea of controlling reality and feels resistance, that's understandable. Reality can't be controlled like a machine, but your interpretation can soften. Your attention can be trained. Your state can be regulated. Your identity can evolve. And when those things shift, your experience of reality changes in ways that feel almost like the world moved, when in truth, the lens did. If you want to test this without turning it into a new self-improvement project, you could give yourself a small window. Not a vow, just a window. A few minutes where you practice the simplest form of control, choosing where your attention rests, choosing how you name what's happening inside you, choosing to return to the present when the mind tries to drag you into its familiar tunnels. If you do that once, it's a moment of relief. If you do it repeatedly, it becomes a pattern. Patterns become identity. Identity becomes perception, and perception is the doorway through which your entire life is experienced. There's a quiet truth underneath all of this, and it doesn't need to be preached. The world will keep being the world. People will keep being people. Uncertainty will still exist. Yet the moment you stop being controlled by the automatic stories your mind produces, something shifts. You respond with more precision. You suffer less from imagined futures. You make choices that reflect who you're becoming rather than who you've been. The external world may not instantly rearrange itself, but your inner world becomes less chaotic, less hijacked, less at the mercy of every passing thought. And that's often what people were asking for when they said they wanted control. So if you've been living under the impression that control means forcing life to behave, consider a different definition. Control can be the ability to notice the lens, the ability to choose attention, the ability to regulate state, the ability to let identity expand instead of shrink, the ability to take one deliberate step inside the pressure of a moment. Not perfect, not constant, just real. And once you feel even a small amount of that agency, it becomes harder to unfeel, because you start to recognize the difference between a life you're enduring and a life you're participating in. And maybe that's the final shift. Not the promise of a life without pain, but a life where pain doesn't automatically become a prophecy. Not a mind that never produces fear, but a mind that no longer dictates every response. Not control as domination, but control as choice, quiet, repeatable, human. A few minutes won't change everything, but they can change the loop that distorts everything. And sometimes, that's where the real change begins. And once you get a taste of that, once you feel, even briefly, that you can step back from the inner noise without having to defeat it, you start to notice how often your mind has been deciding your day before the day even begins. Not in big declarations, in small pre-selections. The quick scan for what's wrong when you open your eyes. The subtle urgency that appears before you've even stood up. The old expectation that today will be another version of the same loop. It's quiet, almost invisible, and that's why it's powerful. The mind doesn't usually announce, "I'm shaping reality now." It just interprets, it labels, it predicts. And the body, loyal and literal, responds as if the prediction is already a fact. That's why the simplest form of control is often boring. It's the moment you notice the prediction forming, and you don't merge with it. You don't argue with it either. You just recognize it for what it is, a familiar mental weather pattern. And when you do that, you create space for something else to be true at the same time. The thought can exist, and you can still choose your next response. That's the hinge. A small hinge, but it changes the direction of the door. Most suffering doesn't come from one thought. It comes from the automatic obedience to the thought. The mind says, "This is dangerous," and the whole system falls into the posture of danger. The mind says, "This is hopeless," and you feel a heavy certainty settle over everything, as if your future has already been decided. When you begin to see the difference between a thought arising and a thought ruling, you realize how much of your life has been lived inside unchallenged interpretations. Attention is what gives those interpretations their oxygen. You can feel it when attention locks onto a threat and refuses to release it. A single comment can replay for hours. A single mistake can expand into a story about your character. A single delay can become a narrative about abandonment. And because attention is limited, whatever takes it tends to become your reality for that period of time. It's not that other parts of life disappear completely. They just fade into the background, the way the horizon disappears when you stare at one spot too long. This is also why the modern world is such a strange training ground. It teaches attention to be restless. It rewards reactivity. It sells certainty and outrage because those emotions grab the mind by the collar. When you're not choosing where your attention rests, someone or something else is often choosing for you, quietly, repeatedly, and with remarkable efficiency. So if you're looking for control, you don't have to reach for something grand. You can start where control is actually available, in the lens, in attention, in state, in the small choice of response. The world will still be unpredictable. People will still be complex. Some outcomes will still be out of your hands. Yet your experience of the world, your inner weather, your interpretation, your ability to stay present can become less reactive and more deliberate. And that's a different kind of power. Not flashy, not performative, just real. Maybe the simplest way to hold it is this. You don't need to control everything to stop being controlled. You only need to recognize the moments when your mind tries to decide your reality for you, and practice returning, again and again, to the part of you that can choose the next response. Not perfectly, not forever, just enough to change the direction of the day.